Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange, and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual literature that I have found in my travels from Puerto Rico to New York. That will make sense in a few moments. It is Poetry Thursday, a lovely day to talk about the beautiful poetry that exists in the world, the unusual poetry that exists in the world, the unique poetry that constantly fills my mind. Last week, I believe it was, we talked about Langston Hughes and the Harlem Renaissance. Today, I want to talk about another New York poet. New York City, you gotta love the poets, that just reside there. But also a very diverse poet from New York City, because New York City is a very big place full of many types of people. So I wanted to talk about Tato Laviera and his poem Spanglish. So I didn't know a lot about Tato Laviera from before reading this. Tato is a Puerto Rican American poet. He has won numerous awards in the past. Pretty celebrated poet in his time so far. He's still alive. And one thing that's interesting about him is that he sort of utilizes the Nuyorican style. I'll put a spelling up there because it's an interesting spelling. But it's basically the conjunction of New York and Puerto Rican cultures, kind of like Chicano, if I'm using that term correctly. So it's like a blending of Latin America and America, and you end up with something pretty interesting. And so this is a specific, subculture within New York where I wouldn't say all, but many Puerto Ricans, when they move to America, they often go to New York City for reasons that I'm not entirely clear on. Maybe it's because there were already Puerto Ricans there, and that's how you find a sense of community. I'm not 100% sure. I will go off and learn that probably after reading this poem. I want to talk about an interesting poem of his. It's called Spanglish, and so I'll read it and then talk a little bit about what I've noticed, and then we will move on from there. A little note before I do read it. I am doing my best to learn Spanish. I've taken multiple years of Spanish in high school, but not in college, unfortunately. And I have been using Duolingo in the past, but as someone whose first language is English, Spanish does not come easily to me. So I might butcher a few words here or there. I did make sure to look up some of the words beforehand and hear the pronunciation so that I'm not butchering it. But be forewarned, I will put a link to the poem in the comments so that you may find it and read it yourself, because it is an interesting poem that I think you have to read to truly understand. So without further ado, here is Spanglish. Pues estoy creando Spanglish. Bicultural systems, scientific lexicographical intertextual integrations. Two expressions existentially wired. Two dominant languages continentally abrazándose. En colloquial combate en las aceras del soil. Imperio Spanglish emerges. Control pandilaje sobre territorio bilingual. Las novelas mexicanas mixing with the radio rock and roll. Condimented cocina lore, immigrant, migrant, nasal mispronouncements, baraja chismeteos social club, hip-hop prieto, street salsa, corner soul and mixturando, Spanish pop farandula, standard English classroom with computer technicalities. Spanglish is literally perfect. Spanglish is ethnically snobbish. Spanglish is cara holy intelligentsia. Which U.S. slang do you speak? So that was Spanglish by Tato Laviera. A pretty interesting and it's one of those poems that flows off the tongue, and it's good to hear because it's the words he uses are so interesting. Like there might not be a lot connecting them together, but it is pretty fascinating. And I will say, like, there isn't a lot connecting it together, but that might just be because I'm not within the culture itself. Like I don't speak Spanglish. So like I looked up the words too. Like I translated the poem, and a lot of it is gibberish, like words that like don't mix together exactly. And so like I'm wondering if that's just because like you have to be like Nuyorican to truly understand it, or maybe I'm just missing the point. Feel free to let me know in the comments below. I do some important things I noticed in the poem. One thing is the beginning, the very beginning. It says, "Pues estoy criando Spanglish," which is the first instance of the Spanglish in the poem, because "Pues estoy criando" means I am creating. So he's saying I am creating Spanglish. So this is him saying, like, by participating in this subculture, by speaking this mixed language, like I am helping to create it, propagate it, establish it even more, which I think is a pretty interesting like understanding of linguistics, but also of how languages work in general. So that's one thing I noticed that was pretty interesting. Another thing is that, as I mentioned before, like the poem like sounds interesting, and like it comes off very like some of the words he uses are very creative, and like they flow well. Like for instance, scientific lexicographical intertextual integrations, or Las Novelas Mexicanas mixing with the radio rock and roll, which I'm pretty sure sounds even better if you were speaking like a native speaker of Spanglish. But it still sounds interesting, like as me, a native English speaker, saying it. So like I think that really helps like liven up the poem and make it sound even more beautiful than it already is. And then another thing that I wanted to note was near the end of the poem, the 3 lines: "Spanglish is literally perfect. Spanglish is ethnically snobbish. Spanglish is cara holy intelligentsia," which I believe is saying like Spanglish is an intelligent language or something like that. But the line "Spanglish is ethnically snobbish" really stands out to me because it's like Tato is acknowledging that Spanglish is a groovy language, is a wonderful language. Like he's happy to be able to speak it. But that said, it could still be used to exclude maybe Puerto Ricans who aren't bilingual, or even other Latinos in America. It might, or Caribbean Spanish speakers even. I think it's a concession that while it might be a wonderful language to speak, it might not be like it's wrong to prop it up and like say like it's the only language that Spanish speakers should speak. Because then you're creating a group of outsiders, and it's hard for Latinos and Caribbean groups and other Hispanics to come together and unite as one in that case. But I may be going like beyond his intention by saying that last part. So I guess we'll just leave it there. Yeah, and that was Spanglish. Overall, I enjoyed the poem. I thought it was very, again, very interesting. Sounded interesting. A very beautiful poem. And Tato Laviera has a number of other poems about being Puerto Rican and that of an immigrant who's caught between 2 worlds. So I definitely recommend that you go check them out. Again, I'll put the poem in the comments because you should definitely read it, because my simply reading it to you doesn't do it justice, as is the case with most poems too. If you have anything to say about the poem, something you noticed, or something you want to acknowledge about what I said, feel free to comment below. I would love to have a discussion with you on Poetry Thursday. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to say it right one day. Subscribe if you want to enjoy more of Poetry Thursday or the many other videos that I have in my collection. Until then, I bid you the weirdest times in your travels. Farewell.